I woke up after liver surgery in the dim, blurred light of late afternoon. The room on the 28th floor of the hospital in Dallas was strangely quiet. Only the soft beeping of the heart monitor broke the silence, pulsing steadily like a reminder that I was still alive. A dull pain in my abdomen reminded me I had just come through a surgery that lasted nearly 7 hours. The doctors had removed a tumor they suspected was malignant. I didn't have the biopsy results yet, but everyone was pretending to be optimistic. I tried to shift and sit up to pull the window curtain. I didn't know why, but a strange unease crept in, as if something was happening. Something I wasn't meant to see. The hospital cafeteria was down on the ground floor, with a glass roof large enough for me to clearly see a few tables near the windows. And I saw it. Wesley, my husband, was sitting across from a woman I couldn't mistake, Skylar, my half-sister. She had flown in from Denver to Texas 2 days ago, supposedly to take care of me after the surgery. But that wasn't a family catch-up. They were holding hands across the table, their eyes locked like no one else existed in the world. Wesley leaned over and kissed Skylar, not a casual greeting, not a brother-in-law peck. I felt every stitch in my abdomen tighten and sting, as if my flesh itself was reacting to the truth unraveling below. But that pain was nothing compared to the cold, creeping betrayal flooding my chest. My hand clutched the windowsill, trembling. I had to blink several times before I dared look again, just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. But then Skylar laughed, that familiar, high-pitched giggle she used as a child to charm her way out of everything, even after stealing my high school boyfriend and insisting it was just a misunderstanding. Wesley was tracing circles into her palm, the same gesture he used when he proposed to me 7 years ago during one of my panic attacks after my mother's sudden death. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass. My breath fogged a small circle, but the scene below remained crystal clear, as if someone was projecting a forbidden film I never agreed to star in. Skylar wore a wine-colored silk dress, the custom gift I had made for her last Christmas. She looked radiant, her lightly curled blonde hair catching the light like a shampoo commercial. And me, crumpled hospital gown, greasy hair tied in a loose bun, looked like a half-ghost stuck between life and nightmare. A soft knock pulled me out of my trance. "Miss Bennett, it's time for your meds." Nurse Marianne walked in with a gentle smile, holding a tray of pills and a glass of water. I turned away from the window and swallowed everything I had just seen deep into my chest, as if it might disappear if I pretended not to know. "I'm feeling better," I replied, lips pulling into a forced smile. It was the first lie in what would become a long chain of lies I'd have to tell to hold together a plan I never thought I'd need, but now I knew my life had veered onto a new path. I lay still in the hospital bed, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling tiled in cold white squares. The pain from the incision lingered, but my mind no longer cared. The images from the hospital cafeteria played over and over in my head like a slow-motion reel. Wesley and Skylar. I began to mentally rewind every little detail I had ignored or chosen not to see. Last week, before I was admitted, I remembered Skylar texting me constantly, asking what I needed, what food I'd want after surgery. I had been touched, thinking my sister truly cared, always had my back. Maybe it was never about helping me. Maybe it was always about being where she wanted. Next to him. And Wesley? He had held my hand in pre-opera, whispering, "I'll be here when you wake up, not leaving your side." Yet 3 days later he was kissing my sister downstairs like I never existed. I picked up my phone, my hands still weak, movement slow, but I managed what mattered most, taking the photo. From the 28th floor window, I zoomed in on the image of Wesley's hand resting on Skylar's thigh while she smiled. An expression with zero guilt. I emailed the photo to myself using a personal folder with an innocent-sounding name. My instincts told me to start saving everything. If I'd learned anything from working in PR for years, it's this: no feeling is stronger than hard proof. That afternoon, Wesley walked into my room with 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for Skylar. "Ran into Skylar in the lobby," he said as he set the coffee cup gently on the bedside table. Skylar stepped closer, her voice syrupy sweet. "Are you feeling better? I brought you that magazine you like. And cookies from your favorite bakery. They're in that bag. Thanks. They both sat down, one on each side of the bed, like two supporting characters in a hospital drama. But I saw it all. The way Wesley leaned to give Skylar space. The light touch as he handed her the coffee. The way she watched him when he stood to grab tissues. They weren't acting as well as they thought, or maybe they assumed I was still foggy from the meds. They didn't know I was watching every little move. That night, after Wesley left the hospital, Skylar stayed. She claimed she wanted to keep an eye on me overnight, since there weren't enough nurses. I agreed, because I needed more time to observe. Around 11 p.m. I pretended to sleep. Skylar was still texting. Every time her screen lit up, I tilted my head just slightly to peek. She was texting someone saved as E. I knew for a fact that Wesley saved my name as Riley in his phone, so whoever E was, it definitely wasn't me. I quietly set my phone to record and tucked it by the pillow. Just in case, I also used my tablet to film one corner of the bed. No faces shown, but enough to capture sound and movement. A few minutes later, Skylar slipped off the chair and walked out into the hallway. She made a call. Her voice was soft, but still slipped through the crack in the door. I miss you. I'll come early again tomorrow. Riley's been sleeping non-stop. I couldn't make out the reply on the other end, but what Skylar said was more than enough. The next morning I played the recording back and saved it to a private cloud drive. Each time I saved a piece of evidence, I felt like I was reclaiming a bit more control. I couldn't get out of bed yet, but inside, I had already started standing up. Wesley and Skylar always thought I was weak. They believed I was too fogged up by pain and medication to notice, that they could keep playing the roles of devoted family until I recovered, then choose some appropriate time to confess everything with the proper amount of regret in their voices. But they were wrong. I didn't need their confession. I'd show them. Proof. Step by step. I was discharged on Friday. Technically, my body was still weak and required around-the-clock care. But in my mind, everything was already in motion. I didn't come home to rest. I came home to begin. Wesley helped me out of the car. Skylar followed close behind, constantly fussing over me like I was the center of their universe. Riley, are you in pain? Want me to make ginger tea? Let's set her up in the living room where it's easier to keep an eye on her. Their sweet-coated fake concern made me want to laugh. I smiled back gently, just like a post-op wife relying on help would. But in truth, I was taking mental notes. Every action, every tone of voice. This two-story house in Lakewood had been our home for the past 6 years. I used to love everything about it, from the painting in the hallway to the dining table where Wesley proposed. But now, it was just a stage for a play I was forced to direct to its final act. That evening, after Skylar went to rest in the guest room and Wesley was washing dishes in the kitchen, I went into our old home office, the creative space we once shared. I powered up the computer. My hands were still shaky but steady enough for the keyboard. It was our shared device, and I knew Wesley had never changed the password. He thought I wouldn't notice, or worse, assumed I was too soft to care. I installed monitoring software, a program that logs keystrokes, captures periodic screenshots, and sends copies to a secure email I had just created under a fake name. Within 10 minutes, I double-checked to make sure it was running properly in the background. The next morning, I faked nausea after breakfast, said I needed to lie down early. While Skylar cleared the dishes and Wesley went upstairs to make work calls, I activated a pen-style voice recorder hidden among books on my nightstand. I had originally bought it 6 months ago for a client project that required recording feedback. Never imagined I'd use it for something this personal. They said more than I expected. Wesley kept complaining, "Don't show too much concern for her. Yesterday I saw Riley looking at you kind of strange." Skylar laughed. "Well, guess her spirit's still hanging in there." I clenched the blanket in my hands, forcing myself not to fall apart. That afternoon, while Skylar went to the grocery store, I unlocked Wesley's favorite photo app, an online storage platform he always synced during our travels. I found a folder named Work, Seattle Conf, and inside were dozens of pictures, with Skylar. The two of them on a hotel balcony, ordering food at a Japanese restaurant. all taken 7 months ago. The business trip I had skipped because my father was hospitalized. I'd believed Wesley when he said it was strictly industry partners. Turns out, Skylar was that partner. I screenshotted every image, every old message, and forwarded them to my secure email. That night, after Wesley fell asleep, I crept into the office and retrieved the small USB drive I had prepared. I backed up every recording, every screenshot, every log from the monitoring software. All time-stamped, all undeniable. I also found a message thread that made my palms go cold. Skylar, when do we tell Riley? Wesley, when she's strong enough, now's not the time. Skylar, don't let her find out too soon. I don't want her to hurt more than necessary. More than necessary? And what about me? Who gets to measure the necessary amount of betrayal from the two people I loved most? I shut the computer, removed the USB, and placed it inside an old ring box in the vanity drawer. I reconnected with Drew Parker, my old attorney, on a video call that Monday morning. He had just come from court. His tie crooked, voice steady and direct as always. Really? This won't be easy. But if you're really ready, I can start this week. I have evidence, I said. Photos, recordings, text history. Even messages where they discussed dividing up the company after I'm strong enough to hear the news. Good. You need to keep collecting anything that shows they're coordinating or deliberately hiding things, especially if it involves shared assets or decision-making control. I paused for a moment, then asked the question that had been chilling my spine for days. If one of them ever said something like, "It would have been easier if I didn't survive the surgery," could that hold legal weight? Drew furrowed his brows. It doesn't constitute attempted murder without a concrete act, but it does show intent and mindset. Combined with financial deceit, it could significantly impact the division of assets or control over the company. I sent him the audio file from the afternoon before. In it, Skylar whispered while Wesley was making coffee in the kitchen. You know I feel guilty, but part of me thinks, if Riley hadn't made it, it would have been easier for all of us. I know it's terrible, but... No, you shouldn't think that, Wesley replied, but he didn't deny it. I couldn't listen any further. Every time I replayed that recording, it felt like I was being skinned alive by their words. The woman who had once handed them the house keys, bank accounts, even her life, was now just an obstacle in their love story. I reopened the photo folder on the computer and reviewed every company event from the past 18 months. There had been a major media conference in San Diego. I didn't attend because I was undergoing hormone therapy following thyroid surgery. Wesley went in my place, and conveniently, Skylar, of course, was coincidentally in town that weekend. I found the hotel confirmation email, 2 rooms, but side by side, booked under the same card. I traced back their message history, searching for gaps in their communication with me, and then I found it. Skylar, the room has a tub just the way I like it. Don't forget to reserve the table tomorrow. Wesley, done. Wear the red dress. I want you to stand out. The message was sent at 11:47 p.m., the same day I was rushed to the ER for a calcium crash, and Skylar had texted me only 2 words, "You okay?" Over a year. While I was drowning in doctors, chemo, and pain so deep it made me cry, they were sneaking around behind my back. And now, just as I was recovering from major surgery, they were figuring out the gentlest way to erase me from the picture. I printed everything, organized it into folders, I labeled them. 1. Evidence of the affair. 2. Hotel bookings and gifts. 3. Asset division plans, texts and recordings. 4. Intent if I didn't survive. I color-coded them, I categorized everything by date and time, I even printed my treatment schedule to match up with the times they were together, like I was building a criminal case file. There was a moment I stood still, my hand resting on folder 4, and sighed. I used to think that if someone betrayed me, I'd fall apart. I'd scream, collapse, beg them to stay, but I didn't. Instead, I chose to fight back, quietly, precisely, and with no exit left for the betrayers. That night, I overheard a short conversation between them, in the kitchen, thinking I was fast asleep. She's starting to walk again, Skylar said. We should tell her soon. I don't want to sneak around anymore. I want to live openly. Give it a few more days, she's still weak, now's not the right time. I smiled, as lightly as the breeze brushing through the window. Yes, a few more days. They would get the truth, but not the one they expected. My house had become a command center for a battle I never thought I'd fight personally. I started with the most important thing, the company. Riley and West Communications was my brainchild with Wesley. We built it from a small garage office into one of the most respected strategic media agencies in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But I was the one who shaped the brand, developed the systems, built the client relationships. Wesley was good at marketing but had no patience for detail. He relied on me to keep the company grounded. And he was arrogant enough to think I couldn't take it all back without him. And he was wrong. I called Carla Jensen, the communications director for a major organic food corporation and our biggest client, for the past 3 years. I had led the launch campaign for their new product line and salvaged a PR crisis caused by mislabeling. Carla liked me. But we'd never spoken outside of work. Until now. Carla, I need a private meeting, and I need your discretion. We met at a small cafe. No one would have guessed 2 women were discussing the transfer of a nearly $950,000 annual contract. I told her everything, the betrayal, the plan to strip me of control, and how Wesley was slowly shifting major accounts under his name. Carla set her cappuccino down, her eyes firm. Really, I don't work with people like that. Send me the new contract, I'll sign with you. It took me nearly a week to contact 4 more major clients. 3 chose to follow me, 1 stayed with Wesley, and I respected that. But losing 70% of our revenue in just 10 days was the first blow Wesley couldn't absorb. And I wasn't done yet. Next came Skylar. My sister was the lead designer for a fashion firm in Austin, specializing in exclusive lines for luxury retailers. I knew how much they valued professional ethics and public image. And I knew Skylar had used her company email to book hotel meetings with Wesley. I sent an anonymous email to Ava McMillan, Skylar's HR director, attaching screenshots, message timestamps showing she used her work email for personal scheduling, and a few pieces of evidence that she was involved with a married man. Her colleague, business partner, and also her sister's husband. I received a response 2 days later. Thank you for providing this information. The company does not tolerate any behavior that could compromise integrity or brand credibility. Internal action has been taken. Skylar was terminated that Friday morning. I knew because the night before she walked into the kitchen pale, gripping her phone tightly, unable to look me in the eye. Did you know what happened? They said someone sent false information to my company. I turned my head and calmly replied, maybe ask Wesley, he's great at handling crisis. I finalized the divorce paperwork the next day. Drew had already drafted it, I just needed to sign. I kept 80% of the shares, left the rest for Wesley, enough for him to realize he'd lost all his financial and reputational leverage in a few wrong moves. I hadn't said a single word about the betrayal in front of them. I was still the recovering sister, the grateful wife. I was waiting for the right moment. And I wanted the next time they saw me to be when everything was done. Documents filed, client lists secured, personnel files sorted, and the truth laid bare. I didn't want them to see a broken woman standing in the rubble. I wanted them to see the one who had cleared the battlefield and rebuilt everything from the ruins they left behind. On Saturday, a light rain fell over Dallas, as if someone was washing away the last layer of dust from my rooftop. I sat in the living room, my hands still cold from nerves but my heart steady as stone. I had sent the invitations earlier that week. I wrote, I need everyone at the house by 5 p.m. It's important. Everyone agreed. My parents came in from Plano, my best friend Avery from Fort Worth, 2 former colleagues from my old firm, and most importantly, Josh, Wesley's older brother, who once said, if my sister ever hurts you, tell me. I won't defend her blindly. Wesley and Skylar had no idea what was waiting for them. I set up the living room like a family meeting. The sofa faced a long table where I had placed my laptop, a small projector, and a Bluetooth speaker connected to an audio device. In the corner, a wooden board displayed printed photos, screenshots from my computer, images of them at hotels, message threads, and credit card statements showing company funds used for romantic dinners by the secret couple. I wore an ivory maxi dress, my hair pulled back, light makeup, not to look beautiful, but to appear fully present. No one could say I did this in a moment of emotional recklessness. At 5:07 p.m., Wesley and Skylar walked through the front door. Skylar wore a sky pula blouse, hair down, still holding a bouquet for Riley's recovery. Wesley wore a gray button-down. His smile faltered when he saw the crowd gathered in the room. "What's going on?" he asked, his eyes darting from Josh to Avery, then stopping at my parents, whose expressions didn't even attempt to smile. I stood and said calmly, "Sit down, both of you, over there." They looked at each other, confused but sat, unaware of what was about to happen. I opened my laptop and clicked a button. The projector displayed the first photo. Wesley and Skylar kissing in the hospital cafeteria, her hand on his shoulder, their lips locked. The second, hotel receipt from San Diego, 2 adjacent rooms, paid with the company card. Then a message from Skylar. "I miss you. Meet at 11 on the 9th floor. Riley suspects nothing." Skylar jumped up, her voice panicked. "Really, I can explain." I played the audio file. "If Riley doesn't make it through surgery, things will be easier for everyone. I know that sounds awful, but..." Wesley's voice whispered in reply. "We can't wait forever. She's weak. Maybe it's time." At that, Avery burst into tears. Josh gripped the armrest. My father sank into his seat, his face aging years in a matter of seconds. "You think I was asleep all this time?" I turned to Wesley. "You had no idea I was watching everything. Every time you left the room, every hug, every smile, every time Skylar pretended to bring me cookies and then texted, 'See you tonight?'" Skylar buried her face in her hands. Wesley glared at me. "You did all this for what? A dramatic scene in front of family?" "No, I didn't create a scene. I cleaned up the mess. And I needed witnesses to show exactly who filled my house with garbage." I walked to the table, pulling out a stack of documents, placing them down one by one. Divorce papers. Financial reports showing Wesley used company funds for personal trips. Emails proving I was the only trusted party left by major clients. Termination letters stating Skylar was fired for professional misconduct. I ended with one line. "I'm no longer the woman who stays quiet to protect the family's reputation. Today, I choose truth." The rain outside began to fall harder on the roof. Wesley silently pulled out his phone, head down, likely searching for a way out. Skylar sat on the floor, arms wrapped around herself. Josh rose slowly, then met my eyes with quiet resolve. "Want me to walk them out?" I shook my head. "No need, they'll figure it out, because from now on, this is no longer their home." That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my home office, holding the USB drive, the one where I'd stored every shred of evidence since the first signs of betrayal. But there was one final piece I still needed to confirm. One thing, keeping this story from being closed. I called Josh, Wesley's brother. He used to be a private investigator for a major insurance firm before opening his own office focused on corporate fraud. I knew if anyone could handle this fast and discreetly, it was him. "Do you remember your offer?" I asked. Josh paused for a few seconds, then said, "Tell me, Riley, what do you need?" "I need to know if Wesley and Skylar are using my company's data to start something of their own. And if they are, I need proof." Josh didn't ask further. 3 days later, he sent me a 12-page report with 3 attachments. Screenshots, a business registration in Austin under the name Revolve Strategies LLC, and a diagram showing client campaign structures originally owned by Riley and West Communications. Wesley had quietly backed up the entire client database to a private cloud account, including internal plans, unreleased marketing strategies, even confidential rate sheets with partners. And Skylar? She had used design software licensed under my name to create new branding templates. Same layout, same color scheme, just with different names and logos. I read every line, my hand gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. This was no longer just an affair. This was corporate theft. I met Drew again at his law office. When I dropped the file on his desk, it took him less than 10 minutes to say what I needed to hear. "We have grounds for a lawsuit, intellectual property theft and corporate fraud. If you want, we can escalate it to the district attorney's office." 3 days later, the official lawsuit was filed in Dallas County Civil Court. The claims: breach of internal confidentiality agreement, unauthorized use of proprietary strategic data, unfair competition, and infringement of intellectual property. Wesley was stunned. I knew because he emailed Drew just 8 hours after receiving the notice. "This doesn't need to go this far," he wrote. "We can settle privately." Drew replied on my behalf, "As Riley Bennett does not negotiate with traitors." The lawsuit quickly caught the attention of the local media, as Riley & West was one of the most well-known communication firms in the region. Dallas Business Weekly ran the headline: "Startup co-founder sued for stealing proprietary strategies, the most expensive divorce of the year." I didn't give any interviews, but I did make portions of the case file public, just enough for former partners, vendors, and clients to see who had been playing both sides. The result? Evolve Strategies lost access to its first 2 clients within the first week of launch. Their office lease was canceled due to failure to verify the legitimacy of their financial documents. Wesley didn't just lose the company, he had all of his assets frozen by the court until the case was resolved. Several contracts he had signed earlier were terminated, with partners demanding compensation for violating non-compete clauses. He filed for personal bankruptcy just 6 weeks after the lawsuit was filed. As for Skylar, she disappeared from social media. My mother told me she had moved back to a home in the suburbs of Houston, cutting off contact with old friends. After being fired from the design firm, she applied for nursing programs, but her record flagged for dishonesty in previous contracts led to repeated rejections. They chose to destroy everything, and now they live with the consequences of that choice. A year later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment on the 14th floor, looking down at the slow-moving traffic below. My company now operated under the name Riley Bennett Strategies. Cleaner, sharper, and fully mine. I no longer saw Wesley's shadow in the project plans, or felt guilt at hearing Skylar's name. The only thing I carried forward was clarity. 1 year later to the day, I was discharged from the hospital. I moved into my new apartment, a bright, spacious unit on the 14th floor of a modern high-rise in uptown Dallas. No more familiar footsteps on the hard wood, no more clinking of Skylar's teacups or Wesley's phone buzzing in the middle of the night. Just me, soft jazz, and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Clyde Warren Park. Riley Bennett Strategies had been running for 11 months, leaner but more effective than ever. I kept only 6 clients, all major, loyal, and respectful of the way I operated. Every decision now was mine, and I answered only to myself. And that felt like freedom. I changed the logo, the brand colors, even the font in my email signature. I had never understood the power of renaming oneself until now. My surgical scar had long healed. The doctor said my liver function had returned to normal with no signs of metastasis or recurrence. But the emotional scars took longer. There was a time I couldn't sit alone for too long, afraid of the memories creeping back. The image of Skylar's hand on my husband's thigh under hospital lights, or their whispered words. Those moments used to haunt me at night, jolting me awake in a fog of disbelief. But I faced them, bit by bit. I went to therapy every Thursday for the first 3 months. I learned not to blame myself. I journaled every Sunday morning, tracking my slow but steady steps forward. And somehow, somewhere along the way, I realized I had crossed to the other side of pain, without even noticing. Skylar had moved out of Texas. My mother said she was living with a cousin in Arizona, studying for a nursing certification. No one mentioned her name at family dinners anymore, and I never asked anyone to stay or leave. I simply chose not to open the door again for someone who had stabbed me in the back. Wesley, the last I heard, he was managing a branch office for an office supply company in Amarillo. The salary couldn't support the ego of a man who once sat in a CEO's chair. His downfall was the result of a long string of choices. Someone once asked me, "If you could go back, would you forgive them?" I thought for a moment and replied, "No, but I'm grateful. Grateful that the betrayal woke me up, forced me to pull every last bit of blind trust out of people I once saw as the center of my world. I'm no longer the woman who sacrifices, yields, and believes that love alone will bring justice. I know my limits now. I know where my lines are, and no one gets to cross them." From a woman betrayed by both her husband and her own sister, Riley rose. Not only reclaiming her company and her reputation, but completely rebuilding her life. She's no longer someone easily fooled or hurt, but a symbol of strength, clarity, and determination. Her resistance wasn't rooted in revenge, it was rooted in truth and justice. And because of that, she didn't just reclaim what was rightfully hers. She found herself more whole than ever before. What do you think about how Riley fought back and reclaimed everything? Was it justice, or did she go too far? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more dramatic and emotional family stories.